So hi and welcome again to Sector Readiness and Workforce Capacity Initiative online module on workforce planning and development. In this session, we'll be looking at this stuff. We'll be looking at future focus and workforce design, looking at profiling your current workforce, and looking at comparing what you need from your future workforce with what you've got, and identifying those gaps in between the two. So just a reminder about the workforce planning framework that we're working through and where we are in this. So the parts of the framework that today's session will relate to, or this session will relate to, are the forecast and design phase and the understand and analyse phase. So these phases are all about looking to the future and establishing an evidence base on which to build a future workforce. We then look at understanding our existing workforce as a starting point, and then doing some comparative analysis to identify what the gaps and issues that we need to address. So starting with the forecast and design phase, what we consider here is what will be the future demand from clients and communities. What will service delivery need to look like in order to achieve the future direction of the organisation, meet the demands, meet the trends and the expectations that will be coming into the future. So that's about identifying that service delivery may need to look quite different into the future in order to be able to meet demand. And then asking what sort of a workforce will be needed to deliver the services and meet the demands of the future. So when we look at future demand, we need to consider what the population will be delivering services to will look like. So at the basic level, we look at things like population numbers, population projections, but we also need to access demographic data that will tell us what the population is going to look like. So beyond the numbers, what are some of the indicators about need or chronic disease or, the cost of living in those communities? What can we expect in terms of chronic disease, mental health issues, and dementia? So what we can see in this slide is that, there's expected to be, significant population growth in an area like Ipswich. But what will that population growth look like? Will it be young families or will it be the elderly? Those are important factors to consider when you consider what demand will look like into the future. So there will be data available through the Office of Economic and Statistical Research, OESR, that will be useful in this, but there will also be information that will be useful coming out of peak bodies and coming out of regional councils that will provide some of those pictures about what's going to be happening into the future. So I'd encourage you to look at that sort of information as you inform your planning. Basically, what we're trying to do in this phase is what we refer to as horizon scanning. So that's actually stepping back and having a very big picture look at what we can see coming on the horizon. So these are things that we've identified that are, very big, significant issues that we will need to respond to. One of the areas that we can look at is in terms of the political element and what's going to be happening, in terms of politics and government that might have an impact. So when we look at NDIS implementation, health reforms in aged care, priority agendas like closing the gap, legislative requirements and restrictions that will have an impact on, how we deliver services and what we're expected to deliver. things like the National Quality Framework for Children's Services or the Human Services Quality Framework for community services, will have an impact on, how we report against funding and what we're expected to deliver when we are funded by government organisations. So looking at those political elements is really important. Another element that's important is looking at the economic factors that will impact into the future. So things like, again, the NDIS and the changes that will bring in terms of how services are purchased and what that will mean for how organisations are funded, how they actually budget at an organisational level, and how that impacts at a sector level as well. Looking at, wages and salaries for staff, which is a massive factor. The cost of living in particular regions is also a huge impact. Also has a huge impact on the ability to recruit or retain staff in certain jobs. Increasing competition for staff, and this has an impact across different impacts across regions as well. The administrative costs of running an organisation are a big issue. Looking at some of the social elements of what will be coming into the future. So we've talked about ageing population and the impact that will have on demand for services. We're talking, we need to think about what will a younger workforce actually mean for us? How do we actually accommodate the differences in expectations of that younger workforce? What can we expect in terms of increasing mental health issues? And the need to be able to provide services there. The social element is about understanding the community in which you're delivering services and being able to respond to, some of those unique needs that a community might have. Next one is technology and the importance of acknowledging that technology, I guess, is here to stay. It's not going to go away, and it's only going to have more and more of an impact on the way that we deliver services and what clients expect as well. So there's a lot of elements in relation to technology around social media, the use of assistive technologies in the way to support the interaction between staff and clients, but also between staff and the organisation. So there's lots of opportunities there, but like anything, there's lots of challenges too. So all of these elements, need to be looked at and considered in terms of what they will mean in terms of demand into the future. And therefore what service delivery will need to look like or could look like. So there's a whole lot of information that we just can't ignore when we're looking at workforce planning. So that's why we do horizon scanning. So looking beyond the horizon is actually about looking at, well, what's regional planning going to look like into the future? What are the priorities and expectations about the future that your region has and that your sector has? There's also a whole field of scenario planning that can help to explore possible futures and help to play with some of the what ifs and to think about, not necessarily plan for different scenarios, but to at least think about what they might mean and to incorporate some of the themes from that exploration into our consideration of what the future might bring. The CSIRO have also identified 6 megatrends that you might want to check out as well. And, they're things these are undeniable trends that we cannot ignore. So they include important factors like technology and ageing, important factors like trying to do more with less, that we all know, but there's some very interesting perspectives that they can actually offer there. And there's a whole lot more information that you can identify to, I guess, make an informed and evidence-based guess in some ways about what might be coming beyond the horizon. And I guess this isn't about buying into any particular scenario or trying to predict what the future will hold, but it's simply about thinking about it, because that's a part of the strategic element of workforce planning. And based on that kind of exploration of what the future will bring, we can start to design the future workforce. So designing the future workforce is about using the information that you've gathered and the picture that you've built of the future to then think about the sorts of services that you'll need to be delivering into the future and how you'll need to be delivering them. And then asking the important question, which is what sort of a workforce will your organisation need in order to achieve its vision and mission into the future? So this is really building a blueprint of, what your future workforce will need to look like in order for your organisation to succeed into the future that you've just been exploring. So the elements that you want to look at in terms of designing your future workforce are things like roles, obviously, but you also want to look at what are the characteristics of the staff that you'll be looking for. What will be the characteristics of individuals and teams? What will be the skills that your staff will require or your workforce will require into the future? And what will be the qualifications? So one of the important things to remember about this is that when you're looking at characteristics versus skills, characteristics are those sorts of things, those sorts of attributes that you want to recruit for or develop through reflective practice and mentoring. Skills are the things that are trainable, that you can actually develop through formal or informal training. And qualifications refers to formal training, basically. So that's, this is about building the blueprint of your workforce for the future so that you have a very clear picture of where you want to head and why you want to head there. And once you've built that picture of where you would like to be, you can begin to develop the picture of what your starting point is or where your starting point is. And we do this in the phase that's called understand and analyse. So the understand and analyse phase is about building a current or profiling your current workforce, identifying the skills and knowledge that exist there, and identifying some of the strengths and weaknesses. You don't want to focus too much on identifying the strengths and weaknesses. Keep in mind that this is just identifying what your starting point is. It isn't about solving the issues that you identify at this stage. It's actually just about building a picture that will enable you to compare where you are to where you want to be, which is what the next step in this phase is, which is about comparing future and current pictures and identifying what the gaps that you need to fill are and the assets that you want to maintain. So assets and gaps is about identifying what are the workforce issues that you need to address in your plan, whether it's filling a gap or whether it's maintaining something that you've already got. We refer to those as, these are the workforce issues that you would want to put into your workforce plan. So I'll talk a little bit more about developing a workforce profile. There's so many forms of this. There's lots and lots of ways that you can do this. But at a very basic level, what you want to start looking at is you really just want to build a portrait of your current workforce that you can then, put a magnifying glass up to. So you want to look at the demographics of your staff. So you particularly want to look at age and in particular time to retirement. You want to actually be able to compare the age of your workforce to the workforce as a whole. You want to know what percentage of your workforce is going to retire in the next 5, 10, 15 years so that you can begin planning for that. You want to look at qualifications and training that staff have. You want to look at be able to look at and be able to articulate their skill sets. You want to look at things like length of tenure of staff, how long are they actually staying with your organisation, and more specifically, how long are they staying in positions within your organisation? Is there significant movement within your organisation that enables people to stay, or at the very least prevents them from leaving? You want to be able to look at things like leave taken or not taken. You might want to look at annual patterns of sick leave or annual leave to get a sense of what's occurring in your organisation over time. And of course, you want to look at things like role types, what sort of roles you have, where are those roles placed, if you've got multiple locations in your organisation. And you want to look at how those roles are organised and how they relate to each other. Another important thing that I like to include in workforce profiles as well is the aspirations of staff. It can be a tricky question to ask staff, what are you intending to do in the next 2 to 5 years? But if you can have those conversations without frightening people, it's an important question to ask. And if they can understand that, you're asking the question within the context of developing a workforce plan that's going to benefit the organisation and everybody in it, that can take the edge off that fear. The reason that it's an important question is because staff aspirations will tell you if people, want to advance, if they want to develop skills in a particular area, or if they actually don't want to do any training, if they actually want to have, fewer working hours, or if they want to go part-time, if they're starting to look for another job, or if they're planning to retire or go part-time. So there's some really important information that's there. My word of caution about developing a workforce profile is that it can almost be a bit too interesting for people who like data, and can be a bit of a rabbit hole in terms of the time that you spend. So keep in mind that all you're trying to develop in this phase or in this step is just that picture of your starting point, which enables you to start developing a comparative picture or a workforce comparison, which will look at, the future workforce that you have designed, the current workforce that you have, and then you can begin to identify and list the gaps and issues that you need to address in your workforce plan. And basically, the gaps and issues are what forms the guts, I guess, of your workforce plan. So that brings us to the end of this session. In the next session, we'll look at what we do once we've identified the gaps, the workforce issues that need to be addressed, and how do we bring those down to a manageable number, and how do we actually develop those into a plan. So thank you.